Alrighty guys, gonna take another crack at making this video. Um, I have a lot on my mind. I'm just having a little bit of trouble conveying my idea, I guess, in a clear and concise way. I think what I'm gonna do is just sort of tell a story, or give you not a story, but sort of my background as to how I found myself again. Got in touch with my inner voice and sort of regained a personal freedom and again, just an unconditional love for myself that is life-changing once you're able to achieve. It really is. Before, I was in a place of inauthenticity, pretending to be someone I wasn't, and I was doing that because I basically felt that I was wrong the way that I was. To really dig deep and figure out why that was, I had to think back to some of my earliest memories. I've always had a really strong ability to recollect things as they happened, I've always had a very strong memory in general. But it's the details and it's the way that I felt in moments that I remember. And I have memories that are of me in the crib crying, which sounds sometimes crazy, I guess, to the people that I tell that to, but it's just is what it is. So I feel a strong idea about what happened when I was young and what made me kind of lose touch with that inner voice and what created a blockage between, who I was and my true authentic self. When I was, my parents told me all throughout growing up, but when I was young, especially, that they thought I was special, basically. My mom and dad both would say this, that, like, my mom would say, when we brought you home from the hospital, like, just the way you were looking up at us, we knew you were special. And you'd be 2 years old and you just turn and look at us and say something, and we would just be astonished, and we would look at each other, your dad and I, and just know you were special. So, of course, I'm sure they had positive intentions telling me something like that. I'm sure they were only trying to enforce my self-esteem, but what really ended up happening was I just experienced the reality of not being that, being maybe not, I don't know, I don't want to call myself average, I guess. Average is sort of, to me, synonymous with just, like, normal. I do feel above, I don't want to even say above, I feel different than a lot of the people around me. That's for sure. But I just didn't feel, special. And I think what I thought of as special was sort of like superior. But superior, when you're just like a little kid, can be as silly as like, who's the fastest kid on the playground? Or who finishes their little worksheet before all the other kids. Things like that. And when those things weren't coming as easily for me, like being the best at things, it kind of made me feel as though like I was wrong in some way, or I wasn't living up to some type of expectations. So that was one thing that kind of got me hung up when I was a kid, I think, is when I first got into school, I didn't have the same, you know, aura of greatness that I seemed to hold in my household. Once I got to school, it was kind of like I was just like everybody else. And maybe I was just feeling like I was not getting the attention I thought I deserved, I guess. And then maybe not getting it made me question, like, well, am I really as special as, these guys say I am? That was one thing that made me sort of question myself. Another thing was I've always been really kind of tuned into the emotions of people around me. And I, to a fault, I would say, like, I'm hyper aware of the, conversations and feelings of the people around me. And I started my life off that way. My parents got divorced at a young age. I think I was 4. And the years leading up to that separation, they were fighting a lot in front of me. And I can remember those times. And I would tell them, stop fighting. And they would tell me, we're just playing. But I knew that they were, that there was clearly some emotional distress going on. I was very aware of that. I could see it in my mom and my dad. And, that, like, people always told me as a kid that when your parents get divorced, it's not your fault. I remember them telling me that as a young, like, when they first got divorced. And they've, and people have always said that, therapists have said that. But I guess looking back, I did sort of not blame myself for the divorce, but I think being around their emotional distress and just kind of feeling that childlike, kind of like center of the universe feeling, I probably convinced myself that I in some way was responsible for their, emotional distress. So I always just kind of felt like wrong, I guess. Like I felt like the way that I wasn't right, wasn't good enough, wasn't meeting expectations. And that feeling, it can be a series of events that build this idea in a young person that they're wrong, or it could also be just one initial first event that's super impactful. And I did have some of those as well. Like my dad was a carpenter, and when he was building an addition on our house, I was about 2 years old, and maybe a little older, two or 3, and he had left some tools out, and he was just doing the finishing touches on like this paint job in what ended up being like this office and sort of TV room, I guess, that was added to the second floor of our house. And there was a screwdriver out, and I think I don't remember exactly if I was like already sort of near him, helping him, or if I just crawled over on my own. But I take this screwdriver and I put it up to an outlet, and I was trying to turn the screw that held on the outlet cover, but my dad turns and he sees me basically about to shock myself, probably. And I remember he says, "You idiot!" And he runs and he grabs me and he kind of like rushes and like throws me onto my mom, who's sitting on the couch in the other room. And I remember just being in complete shock, being kind of lifted, and him screaming, and just thinking like, just kind of confusion and shock of like, what happened? But knowing that whatever happened, it was my fault, and I was like, I had done something wrong. Another time with my dad, we were kind of play fighting in that den, in that TV room that he had built. So this must have been, probably a year later. Couldn't have been much longer because they would have separated by then. We were play fighting, and he must have lost his balance, and he sort of fell over, and he was like, oh, like I could tell that he had sort of like, well, he fell over. And I think as a little kid, like I wanted to take responsibility for knocking over my giant dad, who is like my hero, and we were play fighting. I wanted to take responsibility for knocking him down and have and feel that power, I guess. And I said I did that on purpose, when really he had just tripped and fallen on his own. And for whatever reason, this just really angered my dad, the way that I said, I don't know, just he must have actually been hurt, whatever. It pissed him off, and he kicked my legs out from under me. So I remember just kind of saying, I did that on purpose, and running out of the den, and next thing you know, I'm just getting sort of slammed against the floor. My mom ran in and asked what happened, and I remember he said that I fell, and I was crying, and my mom knew something had happened. And yeah, so like, I think I felt as though, for one, I wasn't maybe feeling comfortable anymore. I was questioning the potential reactions I could get to my behavior. Like if I did the wrong thing, now there was these like major consequences that could happen. I could get screamed at or, knocked over. So this feeling arises, I think, in people where you get these bad responses. So like I said a second ago, it's either a series of like small events that sort of condition you to change your behavior, or it's one major impactful event that tells you, I need to change. I need to be very careful and watch my behavior to avoid getting that reaction ever again. This kind of causes like a split in your personality. You have who you are, your authentic self, and then you have this persona that you use to get the, I guess maybe as a survival tactic or survival sort of instinct, is like to, keep yourself safe in certain situations. Now, I had a persona. It was one that I guess tried to maintain that idea of me being special. So I think a lot of the time I was trying to convince people that I was, worthy, basically, worthy of love. I just wanted to be liked, but I also thought that I needed to be somewhat like, superior to others to be liked. So that, kind of a nasty combination. In the past, I was kind of bullied as a kid. I had gotten sort of chubby, and maybe I went through a lot of stress as a kid, like dealing with what happened with my parents, and I kind of became this shy person, and I gained weight, became, I guess, depressed, and was getting bullied in like the early parts of high school, end of middle school, up until I joined the wrestling team, and I think that really helped me. But I just was always hiding behind this exterior, and the motivation was always to just be, I always was just looking for some reassurance from people that I was okay, that I was good enough. So I'm behaving, but I'm also just looking, am I all right? Am I okay, guys? Am I, because there was this little part of me that for whatever reason just thought that people were at any moment just gonna like burst out into laughter and just start pointing and laughing at me. I don't know why that was. I just felt wrong. You know, but like I said, I have a couple theories. But anyway, in order to you know, how do I put this? For a long time, I was like chipping away at that persona. I realized eventually that everything I was doing was just to, like I said, get love from people, get reassurance, get reinforcement, and it wasn't because I actually like liked the people all the time, or like thought that, you know, their opinion was that important. It was just that I had such a low opinion of myself that like I couldn't convince myself on my own. I needed someone else to reassure me. So rather than, you know, living for like a higher purpose, or living for, you know, your hobbies or your interests, I felt as though my first and foremost motivation was being liked and just overall like well received by others, so that I didn't feel so wrong. You know, if anyone can relate to this, like, let me know. I guess, again, like all throughout my life, I was just in these social circles where I felt somewhat like responsible as what for like how other people were feeling. There were times where like I would be equally trying to like get people's approval, and then also simultaneously asking myself, like, what am I doing right now? Like, why am I being such a fake? Why am I being so inauthentic? And I think, you know, thank God, like, I don't know what it was that caused me to sort of like fight back against this blockage that had been formed. But I had been chipping away at that blockage for a while, and I was starting to realize, like, you know, at first it was like, okay, I'll just sort of change my persona to try to be more like, you know, authentic. But what I eventually realized is like, you just have to, you have to, destroy that thing and, you know, leave nothing, remaining. Like, you just have to be authentic. There's no like halfway. There's some phrase I'm trying to think of. It's like uproot the, you know, pull out the weeds, like root and stem, or something. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but you know, you can't leave any trace. You have to completely vaporize your persona, and it's really important you do that, because if not, you're just stuck in this place of like, well, I'm just gonna do what I think other people want me to do. You know, there's this such a streamlined image of like who the perfect person in society is, or like the image of success. Society's image of success goes against, you know, it changes your motivation. Like, it makes you think, well, if I'm not like this, then I'm wrong. When in reality, you're just fine the way that you are, and you should just find what you want to do with your life. And it shouldn't depend on like society's image of success. So, you know, I realized that there was this wound, this pain, this wrongness, that once I was able to heal it, once I was able to address what was causing that pain, and remove it, that was what first allowed me to question, well, what is this persona, what purpose is this serving? Like, why am I acting so inauthentically? And every time I would just immediately question, like, what was that? And then until I was just ready to demolish it. And there's this feeling of like, well, if you identify so deeply with that persona and you recognize it, then you ask yourself like, well, who am I really? And there was a period of that for me. This is like an incredibly profound question. Who am I really? And when you dissolve that sort of persona and this idea of like who you are, and you realize that there is a truer, authentic self beneath all that, you are kind of forced to then ask like, well, how do I want to go out into the world from here? What are my values? And you can try to like find some things that you believe in. But what I've spent the last few years doing, I think, is sort of prepping myself, like peeling away these sort of inauthentic parts of myself and just leaving just my truest, purest version of myself. And what is left, like what remains on that sort of blank canvas almost, is your true nature. Your true nature is, it's a beautiful thing. I don't know how to describe it exactly in ways that are just like immediately easy to understand, but think of this as an example that helps me. Let's say you're the best man at your friend's wedding, and you've got this nice tuxedo, or maybe it's your wedding, you could imagine, and you've got this expensive suit or a dress if you're for our female listeners. You have your beautiful wedding dress or your suit, and you're walking on this path to the wedding, and you hear some crying to your right, and you look, and in this little marsh, just a little above where the child can reach, there's a kid with his head just going barely under the water, drowning, little toddler. And you're like, oh my gosh, immediately it kicks in. I need to save that child. And you dive into the water, and your tuxedo is covered in muck, and you save the child, and you make sure he's okay, and you say, thank God, we just avoided a tragedy. We all feel this way. Like we don't even want to fathom someone who doesn't respond that way. The person who says, but this is such a nice suit. Like, who is that person? Do they really exist? And if they do, what happened to them? Because I refuse to believe that they were born that way. So there's just this, there's this spark in us, I want to say, like this thing in us that is just inherently good. Like we have a way of discerning from good and bad. Like that response there, it's just sort of built into us. That is your nature. The more you look into that, you realize that like you are just meant to tune into this frequency that exists in you that is just pure love, pure peace, pure authenticity and truth and acceptance. You kind of start to understand, I think, that the consciousness that you possess within you exists in all other things, and you are less identified with the self because you've destroyed that persona. You're less concerned with your separateness, and if you're being liked and well received, and you experience that oneness, and you feel yourself in another. Like I posted a YouTube short of this little beetle that someone said it was a stink bug. I don't know, but I found it in the middle of this bay, swimming, and it was clinging on to another bug that had already drowned. Poor thing. And I found this beetle, and it, like, in the truest sense, and I mean this, like, I saw myself in the beetle. That thing that was in me was that consciousness that was in me was the same thing that was in that beetle. And I lifted him out, and immediately he starts wiping off the water from his antennas, and he's kind of just getting dry and relaxing, it almost looked like. And I just thought it was the most beautiful thing. I felt so connected to it. And when I set him down on a leaf, and when I looked that he was gone, I missed him. I felt like I had made a friend with him. But that force is fully available to everybody. It's built into us. And what I'm trying to say here is there was a wound that happened to me and to probably many of you that told you that you weren't good enough the way you were. You then created a persona that blocked you from your authentic voice from expressing itself. And then you felt so sort of that wrongness made you focus so much on yourself. You became so self-centered that your motivation was all based on what the world could do for you, and you weren't able to tap into that higher frequency that exists within you. And once you destroy the persona, you break that blockage, it's just right there. Now, I feel strongly that when I discovered this book, Asha, which is kind of all about this frequency in us, this highest principle of good. When I read this, it was the easiest thing. It was just like as natural as just drinking a glass of water. It went right down. You have to do, I think, though, some type of you have to be ready for it. Because I think if I had read this, say 2 or 3 years ago, it really probably I would have missed it. Or maybe I would have been like, wow, that was amazing. But back to the main thing, which is just making sure that people love me. Because I don't feel like worthy of love myself. That was the feeling. Hopefully, at the end of every little video, I always have this feeling of, gosh, have I made any sense at all? But if I did, if you're somehow still there, please let me know in some way. I'd really appreciate it. I feel really strongly that what I'm doing is a important thing, and I'm just going to keep trying at this and getting better at it, and sharing my message. And my message is just, I can't take any credit for it. It is built into all of us. I just am trying to express it. Love all of you. Thank you so much. Good night.